For men begin to pass their nature's bound, and find new hopes and cares, which fast supplant their proper joys and grief, and outgrow all the narrow creeds of right and wrong, which fade before the unmeasured thirst for good, while peace rises within them ever more and more. Such men are even now upon the earth, serene amid the half-formed creatures round.
This would seem to imply that man, even as we know him, is not the supreme intelligent being, that we have a potential for superhumanity.
Theosophy maintains that there is not only an evolution of the body, of the form, of the kind that biology studies, but there is also an evolution of consciousness, an evolution of mind, of the spirit. If that is the case, then it would be very arrogant indeed of us to suppose that we are the acme of evolution on this planet. There must be forms of consciousness that are more evolved than we are.
At the outset of the modern theosophical movement, Madame Blavatsky, who was the principal founder of this movement, claimed to be the pupil of and in touch with certain adepts, masters of the wisdom, elder brothers of humanity. A number of terms were used. These are those human beings who have passed beyond our stage in evolution, have attained, but as I was saying earlier, out of compassion now cannot leave us behind, but who are there to help us. Now, they represent merely the first link in this onward chain. They are purely human, as are you and I, but they have moved that much beyond us in the evolutionary journey. But beyond them, there are many, many more stages yet to go.
Blavatsky emphasizes that evolution is a continuous process without gaps. It's going on all of the time. It's a very long process. It's not a quick one, so that it's not a case of our suddenly turning into something else. It's a process which takes place over eons and lives. But yes, human beings are attaining constantly in the long process of evolution, more advanced states of consciousness, and that's simply what the Brothers of the Mahatmas are.
These masters of the wisdom were Blavatsky's direct instructors. Contacted initially as a young girl, she spoke of them as masters of her dreams. It wasn't until she was 20 that she actually met one in the flesh for the first time. He was an Indian, Maurya, and she recognized him instantly. It was he who guided her so that she would learn her own inner self and bring under control her latent psychic and occult powers, and be instructed in the nature of the occult universe, not just for her own enlightenment, but so that she may in turn pass it on to others. Having established the Theosophical Society in America in 1875, Blavatsky toured India with Colonel Henry Olcott, a co-founder, to promote Theosophy. The wisdom that had come from the East had now come full circle, back to its roots. And a headquarters for the society was established in the south, near Madras, at Adyar.
I think that what the Theosophists were doing in the 19th century was seeing that there could be links between Western philosophy, Western science, Western culture, and the rich traditions of the East, particularly of India, and of the religions like Buddhism that are derived from India. And that, of course, is something that's been a recurrent fascination for people in the present century. And in the 1960s, when a lot of hippies went to India and rediscovered it, there's a sense in which they were following a path that had already been trodden by Madame Blavatsky and the early Theosophists. So I think that they did a lot to pioneer this discovery of the East and the potential relations between our culture and Eastern culture.
The basic principle of brotherhood and spiritual unity established by Blavatsky was the torch which passed with the leadership of the Theosophical movement to Annie Besant, the great social reformer of the early 20th century. Besant brought to many people an understanding of the ageless wisdom of which Blavatsky wrote, in a form which made it possible for them to go further. And what of theosophy today? Blavatsky's great classic, The Secret Doctrine, contains knowledge from more than 1,000 reference works and has become the cornerstone of modern theosophy. It is an immense contribution to humanity and has had a profound effect on the course of Western philosophic and scientific thinking.
Her magnus opus, The Secret Doctrine, brings together wisdom from a wide variety of sources. Blavatsky was ahead of her time in that she sowed seeds that would come to fruition in this century and hopefully beyond. The essential idea of science, for example, was that reality was essentially knowable and fully understood. It was just a question of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Now, she preempted many discoveries in science, for example, that were to break open this veil of matter, were to render it shattered in the understanding of quantum physics and relativity.
Certainly science has come closer to supporting her in the sense of, again, the unity of life, the atomic structure. And as science progresses, I think that we'll see that a number of these ideas that were relegated simply to occultism will become common knowledge, but perhaps not through its original parentage, through a second or third generation assimilation.
There are many aspects of modern science that relate to mystical traditions. And actually, it's not very surprising, because science grows out of a mystical tradition. In the 17th century, Sir Isaac Newton, Galileo, Descartes, Kepler, Copernicus, all of them were mystics. And what they believed they were doing through science was discovering the eternal ideas behind the world. They were Platonic mystics. They thought that behind the world we live in, there's an invisible, transcendent realm of eternal forms or ideas. They believed that God was a mathematician, and they were discovering the celestial mathematics that underlay the universe. And this kind of Pythagorean or Platonic mysticism has influenced science all through the ages. And it's still in the background of many scientists' thinking. Most scientists pretend that they're very anti-mystical, but you don't have to scratch the surface very much to discover that science itself is rooted in the mystical worldview.
We even have a report here in the archives of someone who visited Einstein in 1923 in Princeton and saw a copy of The Secret Doctrine on his desk and asked, well, what is that doing here? And was told that for someone who had no background in science, that she had predicted a number of premises in modern science.
Einstein said that knowledge is experience, the rest is just information. Now, it's interesting to contemplate what the effect on his revolutionary ideas was of the secret doctrine in the theosophical context. He had ideas that did not result from the natural evolution of scientific thought in his day. His ideas were intuitive. They were a leap, in a sense of a quantum leap, into new levels of thought. They had a beauty all their own.